Why women suffering heart attacks are too often ignored and the symptoms to look out for. How going after a world push-up record helped this fitness buff bounce back after a difficult diagnosis. And a new morning after pill, not for pregnancy, but for sexually transmitted infections. Welcome to Eye on Health, where we focus on stories that affect your physical and mental well-being. I'm Michael George. We begin with the Nobel Prize in Medicine. This year's winners are two scientists whose work led to the groundbreaking mRNA vaccines, first rolled out to fight COVID-19. Hungarian-American Katalin Karikó and American Drew Weissman are credited with changing the understanding of how mRNA interacts with our immune system. The two met in 1997 and published their first paper in 2005. Their work over the next 2 decades gave scientists a head start on creating the COVID vaccines and saving millions of lives. But Weissman describes a difficult start to that journey. When the Nobel Prize Committee called from Europe in the middle of the night to congratulate them, the two said they thought they were being pranked, possibly by anti-vaxxers. Dr. Karikó is just the 13th woman to win the Nobel Prize in medicine. Two mRNA vaccines that target recent COVID variants are currently available, and the CDC says more than 4 million Americans have gotten their shot. And now the FDA has approved a third option, this one by Novavax, which is not an mRNA vaccine. It comes as national health officials try to prevent a major spike in cases this winter. CDC Director Mandy Cohen helped kick off a fall vaccination campaign at the Whittier Street Health Center in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And if you lost your vaccine card, the CDC says it does not distribute new ones, and to contact your state's health department for a full vaccination record. Turning to a vaccine for another serious disease, the World Health Organization authorized the use of a new malaria vaccine. The R21, developed by the University of Oxford in England, is only the second malaria vaccine to be recommended by the WHO. Each dose costs between $2 and $4, and each person requires 4 doses. The announcement follows a major trial involving nearly 5,000 children in 4 African countries. BBC correspondent Ann Soy was in Tanzania when some children got booster doses. A new morning after pill may soon be available to protect against sexually transmitted infections. Christian Benavides has details.
New draft guidelines from the CDC would use an inexpensive antibiotic as a morning after pill to try to prevent sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, such as chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Doxycycline is commonly used to treat bacterial infections. The CDC says growing research shows some people who take the antibiotic within 72 hours of having unprotected sex are much less likely to contract an STI. Cases of STIs are increasing. The CDC says between 2020 and 2021, more than 2.5 million cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis were reported. The draft guidelines would be for gay and bisexual men and transgender women, groups most impacted by the higher infection numbers. Christian Benavides, CBS News.
According to the CDC, about 1 in 13 Black or African American babies are born with the sickle cell trait, and about 1 in every 365 have sickle cell disease. Lauren Pastrana spoke with one family living with the disease and hoping to educate others.
Eric and Emmanuel play video games together like most brothers do. They also spend a lot of time together at Broward Health Medical Center getting treatment for sickle cell disease.
Usually my chest hurts and my throat because it feels like I can't breathe.
Okay, they look like they're all right, but really they're not all right. They're suffering in the inside.
Yona Tribulant is the boy's mother. She has the sickle cell trait, and so does her daughter.
So sickle cell anemia is a blood disorder that affects the red blood cells, and the red blood cells are those little cells that carry oxygen through the body, and it gives you energy. And when you have sickle cell anemia, it causes this deformation of the cells.
Emmanuel used to get monthly transfusions to prevent strokes. His mother is always monitoring for fevers and managing their pain they sometimes try to hide.
I try to hold it in most times, but sometimes I just have to go.
And so it becomes a very isolating thing because they themselves feel very different, but they don't want to broadcast that.
As a mother, I just had to stay strong for my kids. So I just basically manage day by day to take care of my kids with this chronic illness.
Lauren Pastrana, CBS News, Miami.
The findings of a new study from the USDA may or may not shock you. Most people fail to properly wash their hands when prepping for cooking. We spoke with the agency to learn more about how to stay safe in the kitchen. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but a new study shows Americans need a lesson on how to safely prepare it. Researchers at the USDA observed participants in a test kitchen preparing breakfast foods. Hand washing before, during, and after preparing a meal is essential to prevent the spread of bacteria. Yet 96% failed to properly wash their hands. Meredith Carruthers from the USDA shows us how it's done. Wet hands with water, lather with soap, scrub hands for at least 20 seconds, rinse hands with water, and dry hands using a clean towel. The survey shows cross-contamination is more prevalent in the kitchen than we realize. About 1 in 6 people in the U.S. get sick from foodborne illnesses each year. Eggs are a breakfast staple but can have bacteria that cause illness. Nearly half of the participants did not attempt to wash their hands after cracking eggs. And another food safety misstep, 92% failed to insert a food thermometer correctly in a sausage patty. And make sure you insert the thermometer to the center of the raw sausage patty through the side to get the most accurate reading. As the days get shorter, some people may begin to experience seasonal affective disorder. Scientists believe it's partially caused by a chemical change in the brain brought on by less sunlight. Maggie Rocha is a licensed clinical social worker. She says it's not just about going outside, it's about going out with friends, which can be harder to do in the colder months. According to an American Psychiatric Association poll, nearly 40% of Americans say their mood declines in the winter, and a quarter report feeling depressed. Coming up, the importance of early treatment for student athletes who suffer concussions. And a heart attack survivor is sharing her story so others don't get ignored. Welcome back. Actor Bellamy Young starred in shows like Scandal and Prodigal Son. She's now opening up about the impact of chronic liver disease on her family. Young's father had cirrhosis, which led to a chronic liver condition known as HE that had devastating effects on his brain. 30 million Americans have some form of liver disease. Nearly 1 in 5 have a chronic condition, which for many leads to HE. It can produce symptoms like extreme personality changes, disorientation, confusion, uncoordinated movements, and inappropriate behavior. Young's dad died when she was 15. She told CBS Mornings about the changes she saw in the years leading up to his death and how the family was unaware of what was really happening. Young says people can learn more at the website understandinghe.com. And from one actor to another. As part of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, Selma Blair joined President Biden at the White House to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Rehabilitation Act. Blair's best known for her roles in Cruel Intentions and Legally Blonde. But in 2018, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and now uses a cane and service dog. In 1973, Congress passed the Rehabilitation Act, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies. And in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act went further, preventing discrimination against disabled people on everything from employment to parking to voting. Many kids suffer concussions, but it can be hard to determine who will have long-term symptoms and who can safely return to sports. As Dr. Malika Marshall reports, getting your child seen by a concussion specialist early on could make all the difference in their recovery.
As a school-based athletic trainer for more than 33 years, Terry Pillsbury knows a lot about concussions. The 56-year-old also knows from personal experience. Nearly 2 years ago, she fell off a 5-foot landing, striking the back of her head hard. After weeks of dizziness and sensitivity to loud noises and bright lights, she was eventually referred to the concussion program at Mass General Brigham. Dr. Mary Alexis Icarino is a traumatic brain injury specialist who treated Terry. She says it's important to determine which kids may suffer long-term and who is ready to return to sports. If too soon, their symptoms could return even stronger, or in rare cases, never go away. That way, parents and trainers can know if the child is ready to get back into play. Sound advice for us all. Dr. Malika Marshall, CBS News, Boston.
Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the U.S., but the CDC says half of women are unaware of that fact. Studies show women who suffer a cardiac arrest wait longer for emergency care than men. Bradley Blackburn has the signs of heart attack to look out for.
3 years ago, Catherine Fitzgerald was at her son's graduation party when she felt violently ill. The attorney and mother of 3 was having a heart attack, but she says when paramedics arrived, they missed it. Days later, she went to the hospital on her own. She needed 2 stents, and the delay in treatment left her with permanent heart damage. Her current cardiologist, Dr. Harmony Reynolds at NYU Langone Health, says it's a story she hears from too many women, even those who go to the ER right away. Dr. Reynolds studied women and men who report symptoms of chest pain at emergency rooms. She found women wait longer to get care, by an average of 11 minutes. For women, signs of heart attack can include chest pain, shortness of breath, nausea, and severe arm pain, a list Catherine says everyone should know. Having the muscle to demand care could make all the difference for her heart. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
After the break, an autoimmune disease and a hip replacement couldn't stop this woman from breaking a world record, and why a Minnesota family had to act fast to save their infant's hearing. Welcome back. A California woman just set a world record for something you probably tried to get out of in gym class, and did it all while dealing with a devastating condition. Kelsey Thorud has the story of the woman known as the Lavender Legend. And sure enough, when September 30th rolled around, she went ahead and smashed the record again, completing 1,207 push-ups in an hour. When a 2-month-old with a rare infection began losing her hearing, her parents had just days to decide how to treat it. Susan Elizabeth Littlefield reports from Minnesota.
The excitement of bringing baby Diana home was quickly muted for parents Crystal and Justin Strom. Diana had spiked a fever and wasn't eating. She was facing several challenges: seizures, bacterial meningitis, and hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid in the brain. Over the next 6 weeks at Children's Minnesota Hospital, doctors heavily medicated Diana to control the seizures and inserted a shunt in her brain to relieve the fluid. They gave her antibiotics for bacterial meningitis, but the infection was stealing hearing in her right ear. The family had to decide within a week whether or not to go forward with a cochlear implant before the inner ear was permanently closed. At just 10 weeks old, Diana became the second youngest person ever to get the implant. The device turns sound vibrations into electrical signals that the brain can recognize. The whole family was there as the earpiece lit up and Diana could hear. That's something the family will never take for granted. Susan Elizabeth Littlefield, CBS News, Savage, Minnesota.
That's all for this week's Eye on Health. I'm Michael George. Thanks for joining us.